I'm not going to record it either. Okay, here we go. We talked a little bit about the Battle of New Orleans yesterday. We said that by the time the Battle of New Orleans came about, the war had been going on nearly 3 years, and it was General Andrew Jackson that was ordered to protect the port city of New Orleans with his Tennessee militia. And we mentioned yesterday that the British strategy at New Orleans was to join forces with those supposed victorious forces from Lake Erie and Lake Champlain, which never happened. Remember, American victories occurred in those areas, but the British strategy was to kind of pinch from New Orleans up to Lake Erie and collect all the land in between. General Jackson was informed by the federal government that they were going to send 2,000 well-trained regular army soldiers to meet him in New Orleans. We also told you they never showed up. So his militia was soon joined by approximately 100 men from New Orleans that were protecting their homeland, approximately 100 free blacks that had gained their freedom in Haiti that were living in the area to protect their homeland, a handful of Choctaw Indians, and support from a French pirate by the name of Jean Lafitte, which was very important because since those 2,000 military troops never arrived, Jackson would not have any access to any gunpowder or flints for his muskets or cannonballs unless he got them through a pirate, and that's what he did. Jean Lafitte supplied that those supplies to Jackson, and he would have never gotten them otherwise. We mentioned that there are about 4,000 men that Jackson had accumulated for this battle, and less than 10% were considered regular U.S. Army, which is kind of amazing. As I mentioned, the 2,000 well-trained Army regulars never showed up, and even though they were vastly outnumbered, Jackson will convince his men they could and they would win this conflict. Okay, so what's on the other side? What's he facing? Well, General Jackson and his 4,000 men are facing over 10,000 British soldiers under the command of Sir Edward Pakenham. So on the other side of the battle for the British will be nearly 10,000 British soldiers that would eventually attack New Orleans and Jackson's forces, and the British were under the command of Sir Edward Pakenham. Pakenham. Is it on your sheet?
Yeah.
Right after Jean Lafitte. So, on December 23rd of 1814, the British came ashore near New Orleans, and they camped on sugar plantations in the area of New Orleans, but not in New Orleans yet. So on December 23rd, 1814, the British came ashore near New Orleans, and they camped on sugar plantations. Jackson knew they were there, and he knew they would soon be attacking. So to kind of aggravate them and to diminish their strength, each night Jackson would order his men to fight the British forces. And that was a concept that was very foreign to the British. You didn't fight at night. Okay, that wasn't the rules of war. So what Jackson's men would do is they would attack the British camps in pitch black from both land and sea, breaking the normal rules of war. And those types of tactics, when you break the normal rules of war, are referred to in war history as guerrilla tactics. Not gorilla, guerrilla tactics. Those are tactics off the cuff, against the rules. So, as the British camped on sugar plantations near New Orleans, at night General Jackson would order his men to fight the British forces, a concept that was foreign to these British soldiers. And General Jackson's men would attack the British camps in pitch black from both land and sea, breaking the normal rules of war using what are considered guerrilla tactics. So if he attacked by land and sea, what did he do? How did he do that? How do you attack by land and sea? What do you think he did? By sea, what is he lobbing into the British camps? Cannonballs. Okay, so he ordered cannon fire by sea and ground assault by land. So they were basically bombing those sugar plantations in which the British were camped, and then they were sending soldiers in to fight at night. Now, what did they do during the day? What do you think Jackson and his men did during the day? They didn't sleep much. So what do you think they did during the day in New Orleans? Prepared themselves for what? For an attack. For an attack that know the British is coming. So what they did is Jackson ordered his men daily to build a huge wall fortification of earth and wood. So they're going to be kind of up on a hill, and they're just going to build a huge fortification, a huge barrier that they can be behind, made up of both earth and wood. So he's fortifying their defense position, readying themselves for an attack. So at night, they harass the British soldiers by firing cannons into their camp and attacking on foot. During the day, they're digging up and building a great big earth and wood fortification that they can defend themselves with when the British attack eventually comes. Now this fortification, their location, would be just 1 mile north of the British camp. So, if this being north, south, east, and west, okay, your British are camped in this area. They're going to be camped just 1 mile north. This is where they're building this big fortification. And what's right behind them? What's behind them a ways? New Orleans. Very good, New Orleans. So this is what it looks like. The British camp is here. Here's this big wall fortification that they're building about 1 mile from the British camp, and they're defending New Orleans, which is going to be behind them. Well, not only did the men build this big earth and wood fortification, they dug trenches 10 feet deep in front of the fortification. Then what did they do with them when they dug them? Filled them with what? Water. Very good. They filled them with water. So very good, kids. Yeah, they dug these 10-foot deep trenches in front of the fortification and filled them with water. Well, while he's doing all this, the British are very unhappy with Jackson's night assaults. They even send him a note saying how ungentlemanly his actions are. No kidding. So they are so bothered by his breaking the rules of war and these guerrilla tactics, they actually, the British camp, Pakenham, sends him a note saying, hey, this is not right. You are ungentlemanly for doing this. Well, Jackson, he just automatically quit sending those night patrols. You know that. No. He responds by sending him a note back saying how ungentlemanly it is for them to try to occupy American soil. So he is not real impressed with their note and sends back his own note letting them know how ungentlemanly it is to occupy American soil. So, for 4 days, basically 4 nights, this assault, guerrilla tactics, bang. Second night, bang. Third night, bang. Fourth night, bang. In the meantime, during the day, they're building this fortification, digging these trenches. Finally, after 4 nights of continuous attack, the British decide to advance and attack New Orleans. Okay? So they sat there for 4 days and took this guerrilla tactics and finally said, time to move. And Jackson knew they were coming sooner or later. Why did he do this stuff at night? To try to maybe convince them what? Go home, right? Don't come. Well, after 4 days of this, the British make the decision they will advance towards New Orleans. Which will lead us to our next subtopic, which is American victory at New Orleans. American victory at New Orleans. So, I'm going to put this back a little bit. So here come the British, right? Here they come from their camp. Coming this way, 10,000 strong. And they're going to assault that fortification, right? Attack it. Now, General Jackson's forces at New Orleans are going to endure 3 separate assaults. In other words, the British are going to come 1, retreat, 2, retreat, 3. They're going to be able to endure 3 separate assaults by the Redcoats and Sir Edward Pakenham. And I'll tell you them in order. Here's what happens on the first assault. The first attempt by the British to take Jackson's fortification. Now, this is kind of interesting because the British just don't think we're very tough. I mean, they just don't think we're very courageous. So, prior to this first assault, British Commander Pakenham ordered the firing of firework rockets into the sky. Not those ones that started the fires, you know, the congruent rockets we talked about, not those, but basically just firework rockets, just like you'd see the 4th of July show, that went up in the air and exploded, didn't cause any damage. Now, why would he send those into the sky before he attacked?
Scare.
Yeah, he thought that those firework rockets would frighten Jackson and his men and then retreat from that fortification. Didn't work. Well, then they decided, well, we'll fire our cannons from a distance into the American fortification, which they did, and this was built so well that it never even really affected the fortification. So they had no positive results from the cannon fire. They actually fight for 3 hours, cannon fire against cannon fire, for 3 hours to a stalemate. So no gain on the first assault. So the first time the British assault, they send up these firework rockets thinking that Jackson will be scared and retreat. He stands fast, and for 3 hours they lob cannonballs back and forth, and they basically, nobody's gained any ground. Okay? That was the first assault. Now these cannons they used on the first assault were not their most powerful. So if we talk about the second assault, which occurred on January 1st of 1815, New Year's Day of 1815, what the British did on that day, on the second assault, is they brought in their bigger cannons from their navy, and they began to fire upon the fortification, hoping to destroy the wall. So they brought in the big guns, okay, and lobbed cannon fire into the fortification. Well, this is really quite a story. Well, what does Jackson do while they're lobbing shells into his fortification? He's lobbing cannon fire into their position. And the British had to protect themselves. What were these guys using to protect themselves from this bombing? Well, they're using, not yet, but they're using the earth and the fortification they built, right? Well, what the British were using to protect themselves, they were using barrels of sugar they found on the sugar plantations. And they lined up all these barrels of sugar and fought from behind them. That was what they were protecting themselves with. So their cannons were behind sugar barrels. And so when the American cannonballs would hit the fortification, it would shoot sugar in all directions, right? And the sugar would get on the breeches and firing plates of the British cannons, and what would they do? Because they were hot. What would they melt and make them? Useless. Very sticky and useless. So as crazy as that sounds, it's true. So the British were using barrels of sugar to protect themselves from American cannon fire. And when these American cannonballs would hit these British fortifications, sugar would be blown in all directions. And the sugar melted and ended up in the breeches and firing holes, gummed up the cannons, which resulted in the British retreating. So there's the second assault. Neither one has gotten the British very far. And frustrated Pakenham, to be quite frank. Frustrating beyond belief. So what do you think Pakenham's decision is going to be on the third assault? He's tired of this cannon fire not working, so what's he going to do? He's going to march straight at the American fortification and try to overrun it. So the failed bombardment during the first and second assault by the British is going to lead to Pakenham's decision to lead a direct march attack at the American fortification. And that occurs on January 8th of 1815. January 8th of 1815 is when Pakenham begins this forced march of British troops at the American fortification. Thousands and thousands of British redcoats marched toward General Jackson. And where were they? All behind this dirt and wood fortification, hiding behind it, waiting. So thousands and thousands of redcoats are marching towards General Jackson and his men, who concealed themselves behind their dirt and wood wall. Now Jackson got even crazier, because when he saw the men marching toward his fortification, he ordered his men to fire their cannons again. But this time, he loaded them not with cannonballs, but pieces of metal, also known as shrapnel. So instead of putting those big cannonballs in there that hit and explode, he loaded those cannon barrels with metal. And he was firing the metal at the soldiers as they were marching towards the fortification. So he orders his men to fire their cannons, but this time loaded with pieces of metal rather than cannonballs. Well, can you imagine the scene of those oncoming redcoats when that shrapnel hit their lines? You remember how they marched. It was just raised havoc. It was just brutal. I mean, it was tearing people apart is what it was doing. Okay, you watched the movie The Patriot where the cannonball took the guy's leg off. Remember that? It kind of hit the guy's leg or hit the guy's head. One of them did. These were pieces of metal that were, it was like shooting, it was kind of like shooting a machine gun at you, so to speak. It was just unbelievable. The shrapnel that was fired at the oncoming redcoats just caused major havoc. Each blast killed or wounded several hundred British soldiers. Not one, several hundred. Because the shrapnel just went like this. Okay? Well, even though they were getting worked over pretty good, British Commander Sir Edward Pakenham ordered his men to continue their march upon the American fortification. Now, they're just marching. Are they really firing yet? No. And Pakenham gave orders to his men that they weren't to start firing until he gave the signal to do so. And what he was going to do is he was going to fire one of those firework rockets off, and when his men saw that rocket, then they were to engage the enemy. But they had to get close enough first, right? So Pakenham marches these guys. They're starting to get blown to pieces by this shrapnel from his cannons, and he gives his men the orders that you will start the real attack and start commencing fire when I give you the signal. And that would be another firework rocket. Well, the smoke was so thick, Pakenham couldn't really even see the American fortification very well, and he got very frustrated, so he simply gave the order for his rocket to be fired, not even really knowing where the British troops were at that time. But he wanted them to start firing, so he shot the rocket. So again, because the smoke was so thick, Pakenham could not see the American fortification very well. He didn't know what he was up against. And he was finally frustrated. He gave the order for the rocket to be fired, and the British troops advanced and started commencing fire. Well, picture this. Now these guys are marched up in this area here, and Jackson has given his men the orders not to fire their weapons. They've been firing cannons, but not to fire their weapons until the very last minute. Get them as close as you can. So the result is, when these redcoats get to these moats or these trenches, they got to get through them to get where they're supposed to be. Well, while they're in the middle of getting through these trenches, Jackson gives the order to fire, and these guys are at point-blank range trying to cross these water moats. And in less than an hour, the British ranks broke off and they were retreating forever. So again, Jackson ordered his sharpshooters at the wall to wait until the very last minute to fire. The result was shooting at the redcoats at point-blank range as the redcoats tried to cross that water moat, those trenches he dug. And in less than 60 minutes, British ranks broke off and their men were actually running for their lives. They were just getting killed, literally. And the ones that weren't being killed were taken off. Well, during this third assault, Sir Edward Pakenham was shot twice and killed. So it left the British without an overall commander. The commander had been killed. So they were very, very disorganized. So once they began their scattering at the third assault and Pakenham was killed, they had a leaderless army and they were done. They had no chance of regrouping and doing anything else. Well, the smoke clears. Jackson and his men survey the battlefield in front of them, and all they see is a sea of red from the thousands of redcoats that are lying dead or wounded in front of them. It's just, the whole ground here is just covered with redcoats. Just covered with them. All in all, 2,000 British soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. That's really not bad considering, but 2,000 is a lot of people. So all in all, in the Battle of New Orleans, over 2,000 British soldiers were either killed, wounded, or captured. Guess how many American casualties? 24. 24 Americans killed. That's pretty close though. 24 to 2,000. Now, General Jackson's victory keeps the British from gaining control of the Mississippi River, which is their goal. And it doesn't allow them to control any of these frontier lands, because again, the idea was the British were going to come from here and capture all of this stuff here. They were going to leave the 13 states alone, but they wanted this, just like we wanted it, didn't we? We wanted this, and what else did we want? This. They were going to take it all with the victory, but they weren't going to try to take the states. Well, Jackson's victory in New Orleans saved the American nation from British occupation, no question about it. And even though historians will tell you that the War of 1812 was really a stalemate, people in the United States felt what? Victory. With that big victory at New Orleans. It didn't really make us the winner of the entire war, but we accomplished our goal of sending the British home, so maybe we could be considered the victor. We'll see when we talk about the Treaty of Ghent, we'll see if we gained anything out of this war, right? That's when we'll know whether we really did. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to watch what I just explained to you on video. And I want you again, you guys have been really good, maybe the best class I've had of paying attention to the video and then writing some things down that maybe I didn't tell you. That's kind of the idea behind it. But it does give you a chance to see kind of what we've talked about happening. So.